Tonight's dinner was one of the best, and it's really simple to make. First, grab a pound to a pound and a half of chicken and cube that up. Season well with garlic and herb seasoning and some pepper, and then throw in a few tablespoons of flour. Just mix that up really well and set it aside. Then you're going to get a large pot of water boiling for your pasta. Now grab a large skillet and add half of a stick of butter to this. A medium to high heat here, and then once the butter is melted, add your chicken in. Cook that chicken 3 minutes on each side, and then toss it up for another minute or so. Then once your water is boiling, you're going to add a pound of angel hair pasta. And I'm also adding a couple cups of broccoli to this as well. And that chicken should be about done by now, so you're going to remove that from the pan and just set it aside for a bit. And then to that same pan, you're going to add the other half of that stick of butter. And you're only cooking that broccoli for about 3 minutes in that water, so you're going to remove that and just set it aside. And then take about 2 cups of that pasta water out too. Then once that butter is melted in the skillet, you're going to add about 3 tablespoons of minced garlic and also the zest of a lemon. Just toss that up, and now you're going to add that broccoli from earlier. Before that broccoli, you're just going to cook it for a few minutes, and you can mash it in there and cut it up as much as you want. This is how I'm doing mine. Then throw that pasta in there with about a cup of that pasta water and then the juice of that lemon. Add around a cup of freshly shredded Parmesan cheese and then toss it up really well. Then I added a little more of the pasta water. I'm doing about a cup and a half total, and then a little bit more Parmesan cheese. And you're going to top it with some more parm and then a little bit more of the lemon zest, and then your chicken, red pepper flakes, and then a little bit of parsley to the top. The video does not do it justice on this one. It was amazing. Today I made my favorite dinner. First, take about a pound ribeye steak and then slice it up really thin. Add a little oil to that and then some salt and pepper. Just toss it up really well, and then you're gonna grab a skillet, set that to a medium to high heat, and then also chop up a yellow onion. And you can always skip the onion if you want. Now you're gonna cook that steak in that pan. It won't take long to cook, just about 4 to 5 minutes. And then you're just gonna set it aside for a little bit. And now you're gonna grab a large bowl and add 3/4 cups of mayonnaise to this, and then 2 to 3 tablespoons of softened butter, around a half of a tablespoon of Italian seasoning, around a cup of Monterey Jack cheese, and then a half of a cup or so of Asiago cheese, a couple tablespoons of minced garlic. And now you're just going to mix this up really well. Make sure to set your oven to 400 degrees while doing everything, and then grab a large sheet pan and a French bread loaf. Cut that in half, and now you're going to take that mixture and you're going to spread it all over the top. Then grab your steak and onions and you're going to put it on top of that, and then add some provolone cheese to the top. I then added a little bit of pepper and then some sliced green onions. You're going to bake this for 15 to 20 minutes until it starts to get a little golden at the top. This steak garlic cheesy bread is really my favorite. We always serve it with a side salad because it is really filling. I highly recommend this one. Let me know if you give it a try. This is one of the most delicious one-pan meals you can make. It is incredibly easy to make. We can never stop eating this one. First, I took 1 1/2 of these smoked sausage links and just sliced them up thin. And then I chopped up half an onion. Then grab a large skillet and then add a half of a stick of butter to that. Once that is melted, you're gonna add that smoked sausage. Once the smoked sausage is about halfway done, I'm adding my chopped onion. Then once the onion is translucent and that smoked sausage is nice and brown, I'm adding a couple cloves of garlic. Just toss that up for a minute or so. And now you're gonna add 1 pound of whatever kind of pasta you want. And I highly recommend this one. It was amazing. Just toss that up for a minute, and then you're going to add 4 cups of low sodium chicken broth. You're going to set that heat to high and then let it boil. Just toss up every couple minutes so the pasta gets cooked evenly. And once that liquid is about absorbed, it'll be about 10 minutes or so. You're going to add 1 to 1 1/2 cups of heavy cream. Make sure to turn down the heat here too, and then I'm adding some Parmesan cheese. And then you're just going to keep mixing this, and you can season this however you want to. I am adding some Slap Your Mama seasoning to mine, or you can just skip it all together. And then this is optional too, but I am adding a couple handfuls of some fresh spinach. If it isn't quite creamy enough for you, you can just add a little more cream. This pasta was so incredible, and it was gone within minutes. I highly recommend trying this one. Let me know if you do. We're making one of our favorite dinners again. We're just doing some roasted potatoes and smash burger tacos, and you guys know that we love this one. I've shared it so many times, but it's so good. First, I'm grabbing some russet potatoes and then cubing up those very small. You're gonna wash those and then put a couple tablespoons of oil with those. Now just season them however you want, really. I'm doing a packet of ranch seasoning and then some Slap Your Mama seasoning, and just toss those up really well. Then you're gonna grab a large sheet pan, and I always line mine with some parchment paper just for an easier cleanup. Spread those out on your pan, and then you're gonna bake these at 425 degrees for 45 minutes to an hour, and make sure you flip those every once in a while just to make sure everything's nice and crispy. Then I'm grabbing 2 pounds of ground beef and just season it again however you want. I did this barbecue blend seasoning. Just mix that up really well, and you're going to form them into about 1 1/2 to 2 inch balls. Then I take these street taco shells, and then you're just going to put your ball down and then smash those into your pan just like that. My griddle is set at 350 degrees, and I cook those for about 3 minutes and then flip them over for another minute or so until that cheese gets nice and melted, and then I just set them on some paper towels to drain. Then once those potatoes are nice and crispy, go ahead and take those out, and then you just add whatever toppings you want to those smashed burger tacos. We did some lettuce, and then I always do that burger sauce. These are so good. Today I made the most delicious dinner. It may not look like much, but this was so incredible. These French onion beef sloppy joes were really easy to make too. First, I'm taking 2 onions and then slicing those very thinly. Then I'm grabbing a skillet and then melting 4 tablespoons of butter. Once that butter is all melted, I am throwing those onions in. You're gonna wanna cook these for 10 to 15 minutes on a medium heat. Once they began to start getting a little golden, I threw in my Texas toast. Just bake those per package directions. Then once those onions are just about all golden, you're gonna add 1.5 pounds of ground beef to that pan. And then you're going to drain all the grease and then season it however you want. I'm using this gourmet burger seasoning, and then I'm adding about a tablespoon of minced garlic. Just toss that up, and then I'm adding a couple splashes of Worcestershire sauce. Then you're going to grab some beef broth and add about 1/4 cup of that into a separate bowl, and then you're going to add 2 tablespoons of cornstarch to that. Whisk that up real well, and then add it to that beef. Now that meat should be nice and thick like this. And then once your garlic bread comes out of the oven, you're gonna make little boats out of them. So just take a spoon and then push down the middle just like this. Then you're gonna grab that beef and then fill each of them up. Now I'm taking some Gruyere cheese and then freshly shredding some of that over the top. Just place these back in the oven so they're nice and melted, which only takes 1 to 2 minutes. These came out so delicious. I ended up personally having 3 of them because they were so good. I hope you guys give these a try. Today I made another really easy, really delicious 1-pan dinner. First, grab a couple pounds of chicken and then whatever seasonings that you want to use. I'm using garlic powder, this garlic and herb seasoning, and some pepper. You're going to cut all the weird pieces off the chicken and then cut those into cubes. Season the chicken really well and then add a couple tablespoons of cornstarch to this and then mix it up really well. If you don't have cornstarch, you could just use some flour. I just like to get the chicken nice and crispy. Now grab a really large skillet and you're going to add a few tablespoons of butter to that and a little bit of oil. And then once that butter is melted, you're gonna add that chicken in. Cook that chicken 2 to 3 minutes, and then you're gonna flip this over till you have a nice brown crust on it, and then cook another 2 to 3 minutes. Then I just kind of stirred it around that last minute just to make sure it was all nice and golden like this. Then once you are satisfied with that cook on the chicken, you're just gonna set this aside. Then to that same pan, you're gonna add a couple more tablespoons of butter. Then I'm adding about 2 tablespoons of minced garlic, and just mixing that up until you can really smell that garlic. Then I'm adding this whole pound of Orzo to my pan, and I'm gonna toss this up in that butter for a minute or 2. Then you're gonna add this whole container of chicken broth. Put this on a medium to high heat, and then once it starts to boil real good, you're gonna turn it down just a little bit and then let it simmer for around 5 minutes or so. Then it will look like this. And now you're going to add around 1/4 cup to 1/2 cup of heavy whipping cream. And you can turn down the heat there too. And then I'm adding around 1 cup or so of some shredded Parmesan cheese. Just mix it up until everything is melted. And then I'm adding just a little bit of Italian seasoning to mine and some red pepper flakes. Now you're going to throw that chicken in there and then you are ready to serve. This dinner was absolutely amazing. It is my favorite dinner of the week so far. Tonight's dinner was Mississippi beef sloppy joes on garlic bread. This dinner was so incredible. It only took like 10 to 15 minutes to make too. First, you're going to take this garlic toast and then put that on a sheet pan and bake it as the directions say on the package. Then you're going to cook 1.5 pounds of ground beef. When that's done cooking, you're going to drain that fat, then add whatever seasonings you want. I'm using this one. Oh, and an onion would have went great in there. Then you're going to add 3/4 cups of beef broth to this. And then 1 packet of the au jus gravy mix. Just toss that up some, and then you're going to add 2 tablespoons of the ranch seasoning. Mix again, and then you're going to add your pepperoncinis. I'm doing about 1/4 cup of the juice, and then about 1/2 cup of the pepperoncinis. Mix this up really well, and then let it sit for like 5-ish minutes until everything thickens up nicely. Once that garlic bread is done cooking, you are going to make little bowls out of them with a spoon, just like this, and then fill them up with that meat mixture. And then you can top it with whatever kind of cheese you want. We are using provolone cheese, and then I am sprinkling a little bit of pepper on the top. I'll put this back in the oven for around 5 minutes or until it's all melted on the top. These were so amazing. We will be making this one all the time. Let me know if you give this one a try. Today's dinner was Crock-pot tomato soup. This was the best tomato soup I have ever had, and it's incredibly easy to make. First, take 2 cans of whole peeled tomatoes and then add those to your crock pot along with 1 can of tomato sauce. Then you're gonna fill that same can up with some chicken broth, add that to it, and then half of the can as well. Now you're gonna grab an onion and then dice that up. I am sauteing my onion before I throw it in the crock pot. If you want, you could just throw it in. I'm sauteing it with some butter and then a couple tablespoons of minced garlic. Once those are all golden, you're gonna add this to your crock pot. And to season mine, I'm adding 1 packet of this Italian dressing seasoning. If you want, you don't have to do that. You can add just some Italian seasoning, whatever you want. And I'm also adding some pepper. Just mix that up, and then you're gonna cook it for 4 hours on high. Once that's done, you're gonna take an immersion blender, or you can just put it in a regular blender, whatever's fine. And then you're gonna mix that up really well until that's all smooth. I'm making more of a creamy tomato soup, so I'm adding 1 cup of heavy cream with 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. Just mix that together really well and add it back to your crock pot. You can always skip this step, but I am adding about a 1/4 cup of hot sauce. Mix this up really well, and then I'm adding a cup of freshly shredded Parmesan cheese. Now let that sit in your crock pot for another 30 minutes or so. And with our soup, we are making a giant grilled cheese. So I'm taking a French bread loaf, and then I always cut off the top and then the bottom, and then I cut it straight down the middle. Just lathering that with butter on each side, just like this. And my kids like American cheese the best on their grilled cheese, so that's what we're adding. And I'm using a large electric griddle for mine, and then just flipping that. That's the sketchiest part. Once that is done, I'm taking mine and I'm just cutting mine into little dippers for that tomato soup. This soup was so delicious and comforting. I hope you guys give this one a try. Let me know if you do. Let's make a really easy dinner tonight. First, I'm taking 2 of these packages of little steaks and just putting a little oil and then salt and pepper on them. Grab a skillet and put it to hot heat. Now I'm adding a touch of oil to that too, and then cooking them 2 minutes per side. We are going for a medium rare. And then I'm taking that garlic butter, just putting a couple tablespoons of that in at the end, and then setting that aside. Then you're gonna add the rest of that butter to the pan, and then I'm adding a splash of chicken broth right now just to deglaze it some. Now I'm adding a package of these frozen tortellini, and then throwing those in and then just tossing them up until everything's coated. Then you're gonna add more chicken broth until it's about halfway up each of the tortellini, and just toss it around until they're done cooking, which will only take like 3 minutes. Then I added around a 1/2 cup of heavy cream, and then around 1.5 cups of shredded Parmesan cheese, but you can do as much as you want. My sauce wasn't as thick as I wanted it to be, so I added 2 tablespoons of cornstarch with water and then mixed that in to make it nice and thick. Then I'm just slicing up those steaks nice and thin and putting it on top of the pasta. This dinner was so delicious. I hope you guys give it a try. Let's make a delicious and easy dinner. This is a crock-pot French onion beef potato casserole. First, to your crock-pot, add a bag of the frozen shredded hash browns, and then 1.5 pounds of ground beef cooked with 1 onion. Then add this whole container of French onion dip, and then 1 can of the cream of chicken with herbs. Now you can add whatever cheese you want here. I'm doing 2 cups of freshly shredded Colby Jack cheese. Just add that to your crock pot and then mix it up really well. And you're gonna cook this on high for 2 to 3 hours, or you can go low around 4 hours. Around 30 minutes until it is finished. I topped it with these French fried onions, and then I left the lid off. If you put the lid on, they get a little mushy. This one is so easy and delicious. I hope you guys give it a try. Let me know if you do. Tonight's dinner were these incredible everything but the bagel pork chops. They were crispy, creamy, and so delicious. And they're really easy to make as always. So first you're gonna grab a pack of pork chops, and you can go up to 8 pork chops on this one. Season them however you want. I'm doing some garlic powder, onion powder, and then some pepper. Make sure to do both sides as well. Put those on a cookie sheet lined with some parchment paper for an easier cleanup. Now to a separate bowl, you're gonna add a block of softened cream cheese and then a 1/2 cup of mayonnaise. Stir this up really well until everything is smooth, and then add about a tablespoon of everything bagel seasoning. I also added garlic powder and onion powder to this. Just stir up really well, and then I went ahead and added some red pepper flakes, but that's definitely optional. And now to another separate bowl, you're going to add some panko breadcrumbs and some Parmesan cheese, just 2 equal parts. I did about a 1/2 cup of each, and now I'm adding about a tablespoon of the everything bagel seasoning again. Stir up really well. Now add that cream cheese mixture to the top of each pork chop. I did a couple tablespoons on each, and then spread all over. Now you're going to sprinkle with your breadcrumbs, and then you're going to melt a couple tablespoons of butter in the microwave, and then just spread it all over those just like this. Bake at 425 for about 20 minutes until they're all nice and golden. These are amazing. I hope you guys enjoy. The kids just got home from school, so I'm going to make a very quick dinner. This dinner took about 15 minutes to make, and it was all in one pan. So first I'm taking 1.5 links of the smoked sausages, slice those up, and then added some garlic in there while sauteing it. Then I'm adding 1 stick of butter to this and then just tossing it up with 1 pound of pasta. Toss that up, and then you're going to add 4 cups of chicken broth to this, and you're going to let that boil until those noodles are done cooking. That was around 11-ish minutes or so. So once there's just about no liquid left, you're going to add about a half of a cup of heavy cream. And then I'm adding this Borgian cheese to mine, or you can just add a couple cups of any kind of shredded cheese you want, because I am also adding around a half of a cup of shredded Parmesan. This dinner is so easy and delicious. I hope you guys give this one a try. Tonight's dinner was Crock-pot taco potato soup. This one was so incredibly easy and it tastes so amazing. First, take a 2-pound bag of frozen cubed hash browns and add those to your Crock-pot. Then take a whole container of chicken broth and add that to your Crock-pot as well with this spicy nacho soup. And then I had a can of the cheddar cheese soup as well. And you can use beef broth if you want instead. I just like chicken broth in my potato soup better. Then I took 1.5 pounds of ground beef and I'm cooking that separate, and then adding an onion to that, draining some of that grease, and then adding about a pack and a half of taco seasoning. Once that is all cooked, you're going to add this to your crock pot as well. Season that up however you want. I'm using some garlic powder, some Slap Your Mama seasoning, and then some more taco seasoning. And I think a can of diced tomatoes with green chilies would have been great in here. I just didn't have it. Cook this on high around 4 hours or low around 6 hours, or until the potatoes are tender. And then you're going to add 1 cup of heavy cream, and then around 3/4 cups or so of sour cream. Then I also added around 2 cups of shredded Colby Jack cheese. Stir that up really well and then cook it another 30 minutes or so until everything is nice and combined and that cheese is all nice and melted. This soup was absolutely amazing, so easy to make. I topped mine with some sour cream and a little bit of chives. Hope you guys give this one a try. Let me know if you do. Today I made nacho spaghetti and it tasted amazing. I'll definitely be making this again. So first I cooked a pound of ground beef and threw an onion in there. You could do 1.5 pounds of ground beef too if you want. All right, and then a packet, maybe a little bit more than a packet of taco seasoning. I just threw some in there, and then just do that as the package says with a little bit of water. Stir it up, kind of look like this, and then you're gonna add 1 can of Rotel, and then a can of this Fiesta nacho cheese soup. And then I filled that can up with some heavy whipping cream all the way to the top, and then you're just going to dump that in. And then a cup of this Fiesta blend shredded cheese. Throw that in. Oh, and then a jalapeno. I meant to do that earlier. All right, throw that cheese in, and then you're just going to keep stirring until that cheese is nice and melty and not all stringy. It takes just a bit, like 5 to 10 minutes, and it'll turn out like this. The sauce was amazing. Looks like this. And then you're going to cook those spaghetti noodles separately, and then you're going to throw them in that sauce, stir up really well, and then I added even more cheese to the top, and then I covered that for just a bit until it was all nice and melted again. I will definitely be making this one again. I was honestly surprised on how much I love this one. Definitely give it a try. Let's make dinner for when the kids get home from school. This is a 1-pan queso steak and rice. I think this is going to be my favorite meal all week. It is so flavorful and delicious and really easy to make. This is everything you're going to need. First, I started off by taking about 1.5 pounds of really thinly sliced steak, and I'm just putting a little oil on those and then seasoning them really well with some salt and pepper. Cook those in a hot pan for just about 1.5 minutes on each side. They will not take long because they're so thin. While that's cooking, you're going to chop up all your veggies. I'm doing 2 bell peppers and 1 onion. When those steaks are finished cooking, you're going to take those off and then add a few tablespoons of butter to that pan. Once that butter is about melted, you're going to add all those veggies in and just cook these for just a few minutes. When those veggies are tender, add a big old scoop of minced garlic in there and just cook another minute. Now add a can of tomatoes with green chilies, and I did not drain that. Then 3 cups of low sodium beef broth and 3 cups of instant rice. Stir this up really well and let it boil. While that rice is cooking, which will only take about 5 to 8 minutes since it is instant rice, you're going to slice up your steak into little bite-sized pieces, or really however you want. Then don't forget to season that up really well. I used some Slap Your Mama seasoning and then a packet of taco seasoning. Mine was pretty spicy, so don't add the Slap Your Mama if you don't want it real spicy. Then you're going to heat up that queso. I did about 3/4 cups of queso. Spread that on once that rice is cooked through. Top it with your steak, and then I added a little bit more queso to the top. It was delicious. I am making my absolute favorite dinner tonight. I am so happy that it's fall and the weather has kind of cooled off here a little bit, I guess. This homemade potato soup is truly just the best. So first, you're just taking your russet potatoes. Make sure you wash them really good, and I'm taking about 7 or 8 of the jumbo ones. And then I am peeling mine and then chopping those into little cubes. And you can do any size here you want. I like mine into smaller cubes because I don't like to mash them as much, but you can do bigger cubes and then mash them later on. It's really up to you there. Whenever I get them cut into cubes, I am washing those again, and then you're going to add those to your crock pot. And I was not thinking here, I definitely dirtied a dish and did not need to. So on top of those potatoes, you're going to add 4 cups of chicken broth here, and then grab an onion and then chop that up, and then I'm adding that as well. This onion was not as strong as the other day. Now go ahead and grab your minced garlic, and you can add as much as you want. I'm adding 2 really large scoops, and then of course season it how you want, but I'm adding some smoked paprika, some salt, and then some pepper. Now you are going to let this cook on high or low, but I'm doing high for about 4 hours. Low, it'll be about 6 hours until those potatoes are nice and tender. Then to a small separate bowl, you're going to add 1 cup of heavy cream, 3/4 cups of sour cream, and then 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. Just add this in and then mix it well. And I'm just mashing my potatoes up a little bit. You can mash them up as much as you want there. And you do not have to add cheese, but I am of course adding cheese. I almost added that entire block of cheese, but I'm saving some for the top too in case anybody wants them on the top. So you add that in, and then I'm of course making some bacon for the top because that is a must. This potato soup is the best. I hope you guys give it a try. Let me know if you do. Tonight's dinner was this creamy cottage cheese chicken. And don't worry if you don't like cottage cheese, because I actually don't care for it either, but this recipe is amazing. First, slice 3 chicken breasts in half to make them really thin, and then season it however you want. I'm using garlic powder, onion powder, and some pepper. Then to a large bowl, you're gonna add about a 1/2 cup of each of cottage cheese, mayonnaise, and sour cream, and then put a bunch of ranch seasoning in that. I got this idea from my mom. This is actually her veggie dip, and I thought it would go great over chicken. Now you're gonna add that cottage cheese mixture on top of your chicken. Spread that all around, and then I topped it with some panko breadcrumbs for a nice crunch. I baked this at 375 degrees for about 30 minutes, and then I flipped it to broil for another 3 to 5 minutes until it was all nice and golden. This one was so creamy, juicy, and delicious. You have to give this one a try. Let me know if you do.